It's like 1984, if we're really honest. It is, it's bunnies in 1984. I have had a really bad writing week. So the week before, I was really excited because I had to restart my novel from scratch. I'd written 8,000 words. I completely redeveloped the story, changed the story and the style that I was writing in, and started again. And I was so excited because I actually wrote 10,000 words, which felt like a huge breakthrough. But then, as always, life got in the way. I think what's been going on in the news has definitely affected me, but I also had a gig, so I do music as well. I will be doing more videos around the music stuff and releasing music videos when the time is right, but I am a songwriter and I perform live gigs locally, and I was trying out a new live setup. There was a venue in Stockton just near us called the Stockton Arts Centre. They invited me to a scratch night where I got to test out a new live setup with my music that I've been wanting to do for a really long time, and it was really fun. It went really well. I was really pleased with how it sounded, most of it. I was very nervous, but the nerves building up to that, the amount of nervous energy I had was so great that I just crashed for 2 days afterwards. So I had no energy to do anything but the absolute necessities of life. I just really struggled this week to push through and actually make myself write. Usually if I'm just a bit bored or tired, I can get up and make myself start writing and then it comes. But this week particularly, I just felt like death. I felt like I was ill, but I wasn't ill, if that makes sense. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the fact that I am handwriting this novel. I started doing morning pages. If you don't know that practice, I'll put some links below. In the book, The Artist's Way, one of the tasks you have to do is get up every morning and write, I think it's 2 A4 pages. Now, I don't do that. I write 2 pages of this. You basically just brain dump. So you get up first thing in the morning before work, before everything else, and you just write whatever. And I mean, some of these pages have just one word repeated over and over and over because I could not be bothered I couldn't think of anything good, and that's the point of it. The reason I like handwriting is because it slows my brain down. My hand isn't fast enough to keep up with my brain. So I have to really think about the actual word I'm writing in the sentence. And I found that when I handwrite it, I remember the characters, I remember the sentences, the wording, I remember the entire shape of the story. When I'm writing on a computer, it feels cheap. For me, this is not the same for everyone else, and I would never ever say you should do one or the other, but I thought it was really interesting for me. I found that it became a practice. So I then take this and type it, copy it out into my Pages document. There's something so satisfying about that moment because then I see the word count for real, even though I kind of know roughly how many words I write on each page. I started watching Little Dorrit. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a BBC adaptation of the Charles Dickens novel. Now, I've seen it before. It came out in like 2005, so I saw it when it came out, but I periodically will go back to it. It's one of my comfort series. The cast is amazing. It's such a sweet story. But the thing that stood out to me the most this time when I watched it were the characters. I know I knew somebody once who absolutely hated Dickens. I'm sure there are people who will read him who will find his characters over the top. And they are caricatures, but at the same time, especially if you're British, when I was watching Little Dorrit, I was like, yeah, they're caricatures, but I recognise these people. The way Dickens captures British society, it hasn't changed much in all those years. It really got me thinking about how every character was defined, and you knew they all had their quirks, they all had a place in the story, but you knew it was kind of more like a play. When they come on stage, you know what to expect to some extent. It made me realise I had done none of that in what I was writing. It made me realise that my main character is not developed. The good thing is, I know what my characters are supposed to be, I just hadn't written it. My character is 14 years old, and her mother has a certain type of character that I absolutely can see in my mind, but when I'm writing it and I'm looking back at what I'd written, that character is not reacting in the situations the way the character should. So it really got me thinking about, I need to go and develop my characters. Before I started writing this book, I had signed up to BBC Maestro in December, and I'd started a course with Isabel Allende. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And I absolutely fell in love with her as a person. She's so different and real. There's a lot of writing courses that I've seen, but hers really stand out because she's lived. she had a task in one of her sections of the video, which was to get people to just start writing the story. And she basically said, write a bad story. But the exercise that she gave was tell a bad story about when you're 9 years old at school. I decided to take that idea of being that age and describe some of the characters that I'd met when I was that age. And I had no idea what was going to come of it, but just starting describing like the shape of their face, their eyes, led into then how they act and behaved and their personality. And that actually developed into a scene in my book that tells me why my main character is the way she is. And I thought it was really interesting. I wasn't focusing on the main character, but this side character had an effect. The other thing that I've been thinking a lot about this week is genre. Now, I don't like categorizing things. I think people categorize things so they can sell it. But I think I'm in an interesting position because I didn't expect to be writing for young people. It's just a story that came out because I think I'm writing it for me. I think it's something that I need closure on. And these characters just popped into my head and will not leave. So can't help that. It just feels a little presumptuous to say I'm going to write a kid's book. Here, kids, read this. Like, I don't feel I'm doing that. I'm writing a story about a character of a certain age, and I have lived through that age, so I'm just kind of doing that. And then it's weird when you have to think about it as in targeting someone. I don't know what my thoughts are. I'm trying to research, and I think this is a really good stage to research because I'm just not even halfway through my first draft. I used to read everything that I could. I loved reading. But I also have never felt too old for a book in my entire life, and I wanted to show you some of the books that I still read today that I read as a kid. So the first book that I loved is Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. So this is the story of Sal, who goes on a road trip with her grandparents, and she starts to tell her grandparents the story of Phoebe Winterbottom and her mother, and it's kind of like a mystery thriller. It's all about family and relationships. It was really funny as well. The interactions between the grandparents and their granddaughter are great. This is a bit of a cheat. This is Watership Down. I have read this book, but as a kid I actually watched the 1970s animation. Brutal. But I think you should watch all these things when you're young because life gets harder and harder and you should be afraid of the world while you're young. Look at the world right now. Like, maybe it's better to get a sense of it as a kid with little bunnies so you know what's coming eventually. I love this book. I find it mystical and it really does feel like a grown-up world. There's an army. It's like 1984 if we're really honest. It is. It's bunnies in 1984. This is any age, I think, but I see it as a kid's book because I read it as a kid. So I'm from the UK. I was born here. I'm British, but I did spend some of my childhood in the Mediterranean. And Gerald Durrell, his family moved to Corfu when he was a kid. So this book is basically an autobiography, a very funny one, about his family, his crazy, dysfunctional family. And it's kind of like a diary, a nature diary of, he just goes into the garden and describes all these amazing creatures. Spiders living under trapdoors in the moss, in the wall, and the way he describes these creatures, it's just, and I loved nature growing up. I was a really big fan of just sitting and watching. I'm terrified of them. I'm scared of wasps, I'm scared of spiders. But in places like Cyprus, I would just sit and watch insects all day because they're so interesting. And so I loved this book. So I had this on cassette audiobook, and I think it was read by a guy called Nigel Davenport. To me, a lot of the books that I read as a kid, I did read them, but I had them on audiobooks, and the voices that narrated those stories are really important to me as well. Another example of that is this. So I didn't read this as a kid. I listened to the BBC Radio 4 dramatised version, which was so good. But again, I like this book. And now we're going to get onto some of my favourite kids' books that I read just a little while ago. And those are the writings of Dick King-Smith. Now, the ones I'm going to show you are not the ones one of them is the one he's famous for, but there's another series that I really love, which I might talk about in a different video. So we have The Sheep Pig, which you might know as the film called Babe. Again, does not capture the book in the right way because they Americanized it. And Magnus Power Mouse, which I think is incredibly underrated. This book is so sweet and so funny, and I read it and I cried at the end of it. There's something about these books that I just feel like happy after I read them. They touch on how we should be as people, even though these are animals. It talks about like the goodness in people, in animals, and how, like Babe in particular, Babe's character is just so positive all the time. He just keeps going for what he wants, even though everything around him, he's basically a pig in a system that wants to break out of that system, but in a really sweet and polite way. And that's the thing about him, he's a very polite pig. Magnus Power Mouse is a little bit more, this is a little bit more raw actually. When I reread it I was like, oh dear, there's a really sad part at the beginning. But again, it's a mouse in a system that does not act like it should in the system. Maybe that's something that I'm drawn to, looking at all these books. Well, some of them don't go into that category, but yeah, there's like actual messages in these books that I really liked. So that's to give you an idea of what I like to read in terms of kids' books, young adult books. And I think what I'm writing is somewhere in the scope of that. It's not fantasy. It's very much about relationships, my book, family dynamics, how my main character is interacting with the people around her. I'm going to continue doing my research around these things. I would like to read some current young adult and children's books to see what the difference is. I think I'm going to get a shock. So this has been quite a ramble. Thank you for sticking with me if you have made it to the end. I will hopefully have a better update of actual writing progress next week. Although life has begun. I'm actually observing that the new year starts in March, April this year. So I'm still seeing these months as lead-in, even though we have to, you know, go to work and all the other things. In my head, until the sun comes out again, we haven't started the year, so we're good. I have a few other writing videos. I've been putting these out since the beginning of January. I'll link the playlist to that somewhere in this video and in the description. I'm also doing art videos on a Sunday, so that is mainly for me on a Sunday to just paint something or draw something. They're kind of watch along, something to have in the background, very calming. I'm still getting my head around how to film those exactly. I quite liked the one I've just done, which was a bit more of a vlog rather than just a time lapse. Those will be going up on a Sunday, and these writing ones I'm trying to post every Wednesday. And then for anybody that is watching this who likes my music, that will be coming. I will do something around that. I'd love to know what you're working on, how your progress is, if you're writing a first draft, if you are an artist who's painting things, or you're a musician, whatever. Just let me know in the comments what you're working on, how it's going so far. We're still only in January. If you have a channel and you have links or videos to what you're doing, I'd love to see them, so just let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.